everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the book addiction tag. You're probably sick to death of this one because I feel like literally everyone on booktube has done it at this point. But when I first started seeing it do the rounds over the summer, I was just so in love with the questions and I knew I had to do it, but I'm bad at fitting things in, I guess. I'm bad at making unscheduled videos, so it's taken me until mid-October, but you know what? We're doing it now. I haven't been tagged by anyone in particular, and I'm not sure who the creator is off the top of my head, but I will look that up and the creator of this tag will be linked down below. But yeah, it's the book addiction tag. I think they're cool questions. Let's get into answering them. Question 1 is, what is the longest time you can comfortably go without picking up a book? And I'm not sure if this means between two books or like without doing any reading. So I'm never between two books, honestly. I rarely finish everything that I'm reading before starting something else. I usually have anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 books on the go if we're including audiobooks. So I'm never like waiting a week after finishing one to start the next. I'm just continual rolling cycle. If we're interpreting it, however, to mean how long can you comfortably go between like sitting down and reading, I think probably the max is about 48 hours for me. Usually, under all normal circumstances, it would be no more than 24 because I read every single night before bed. But if I have a really busy day and I fall right asleep and I don't even read anything before bed and then I have a really busy day the next day, maybe 48 hours. But yeah, usually absolute most 24 hours. Question 2 is, how many books, physical or device, do you carry on your person when you're out and about? So I'm an ebook reader, as you guys know, which means most of my books are on my Kindle library. So I always have my phone with me, which means I usually have probably 1 or 2 ebooks actually downloaded to my phone. Probably 1 or 2 audiobooks actively downloaded to my phone on Scribd. But I could, like, theoretically, if I wanted to use a couple hundred, a little bit of data, I could theoretically access my entire library. So 2 or 3 to all of them, and I sometimes carry my Kindle with me as well. If I'm going somewhere where I know I'm gonna have to wait for a while, like if I'm going to a doctor's appointment or something like that, or I'm going somewhere where I know I'm gonna, say, go to a restaurant on my own, then I'll always bring my Kindle. But if I'm just, say, going to work, I probably don't. Question 3 is, do you keep every book that you buy/receive, or are you happy to pass them on? All of my questions are gonna be caveated with, I read ebooks, so because I read ebooks, it's not really a good way to pass them on, so I keep them. They take up so little storage space that whatever. If I read physical books though, I think I've reached a point in my life where I would only keep the ones I loved and pass the rest on, either to friends and family or donations or something like that. There was a period when I was younger, when I was in university and first really reading, like as an adult, where I kept everything. I kept all of the books that I had ever bought, even if I didn't like them. And then when I had to ship them all from my parents' house to my current home and had to box them all up, I really went through and was like, no, okay, I'm not hoarding a book that I gave 2 or 3 stars 4 years ago. That's silly. I'm just gonna keep the ones that I love. Question 4 is, how long do you spend in a bookstore on a typical visit? And I'm answering this as, normal times, we're all browsing stores like normal. And it sort of depends. If I'm with someone, I try and gauge it by how long they want to spend there. So for example, if I'm with my partner, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I don't want him to get bored and, grumpy. Not that he's a grumpy person, but like, no one wants to hang out in a store that they're not interested in for an hour. I'd be annoyed if he took me to like a squash racket store and expected me to just look at stuff for an hour. Like, I can amuse myself for 10 or 15 minutes, but past that. So if I'm with someone like that, or if I'm just, popping in on my way somewhere, yeah, 10, 15 minutes maybe. If I'm with a friend and we're explicitly out going to bookstores, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes probably, if we're having a really good chat and like talking about books and talking about things as we browse. And then on my own, it's just like, I'm limited by the size of the store, nothing else. My typical local independent store that I like to go to, maybe half an hour or so. It's not very big, so there's not that much browsing to do, and I'm not gonna look at all the genres. But when I went to New York several years ago, I think I spent like a full morning in the Strand, like just browsing everything. There's so much to see, there's so many books. So really, I'm only limited by the size of the bookstore and whether or not it has a cafe, because if it has a cafe, I could spend all day there. Question 5 is, how much time per day do you actually spend reading? And my bare minimum, if I'm not like absolutely wiped, is I'll read for at least 10 minutes before bed. Like, try and get at least a chapter or something of something that I'm reading done before bed, just to keep that habit, because I'm a total person of routine. So it's like, even if I'm not going to read for a long time, I need to read a little bit to keep my brain being like, right, this is the time of day where we read. We can't fall asleep because we haven't read yet. But on a normal day, especially now that we're working from home and I just have so much more time, and also now that I'm doing YouTube, so I'm like trying to focus on reading more, I'm probably 30 minutes to an hour before bed every day. Actually, now that I think about it, I feel like I've been reading for more like an hour and a half before bed now. But that's kind of variable. It really depends on a lot of things, how engaged I am with what I'm reading, how tired I am when I go to bed, you know, all of that. And then I also usually listen to an audiobook for half an hour to an hour a day, because I'm really trying to get out for a walk or a run of some sort every day and not let it go like, you know, 4 days without leaving my little basement apartment. So I try and like, be like, right, you gotta get out for your walk and you're gonna listen to your audiobook while you do it. So I guess anywhere from an hour to 2 hours a day, probably, on like a typical day where I'm not explicitly focusing on reading. Question 6, where does the task picking up a book fall in your daily to-do list? As I said, reading is a before bed thing for me, so most days it falls basically at the end of the list, but not in a it's not a priority way, but in a it's my relaxation time and my unwind time, so it's like what I'm looking forward to. So it's not that I, you know, prioritize other stuff over reading exactly, it's more that I can't sit down and relax if I know that there's dirty dishes in the sink, or that there was some chore that I have to do, or something like that. And then on top of that, maybe one work day a week or so, I try and schedule myself time to read, where I sort of say like, right, I'm not going to try and edit a video or do a big chore or, you know, have social time or anything. I'm just going to try and like eat my dinner, do my dishes, and have a whole evening of reading. And I try and get a couple blocks in on the weekends too, where I might sort of plan to be like, oh, well, Saturday afternoon I'm going to read for a couple hours, and then Sunday morning before brunch or something I'm going to read for a couple hours, and try and add some reading into my weekends like that as well. Question 7 is, how many books do you reckon you own, including ebooks? So I think I have on the order of 1,000 ebooks, including read and unread. And as for physical books, this is a wild guess because I was too lazy to count them. I'm guessing I probably own about 200 physical books. But that could be wildly off, and those are mostly read. I've read almost all the physical books that I own. Probably somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 books, but like I said, I'm really not sure about that physical book count. Maybe someday I'll do a shelf tour and actually count them, but who knows. Question 8 is, approximately how often do you bring up books in conversation? And I'm going to answer in 2 parts. One, with my partner, who I live with. I talk about books with him probably a couple times a week. He's not a very big reader for like pleasure reading, so, you know, every now and then I give him an update on what I'm reading, and I describe it to him and stuff, but we don't like have, you know, daily conversations about what I'm reading. And with other people, I try and sort of just follow their lead, honestly. I might mention a book I'm reading if they ask what I've been up to or something, or if they mention something they've been reading or ask about it, I'm happy to talk about it. But I'm definitely not someone who's like, hi, I haven't seen you in 6 months. Let me give you a list of everything I've read. Unless it was a friend that, like, that was the basis of our friendship. I don't know, it's complicated. Question 9 is, what is the biggest book by page count that you have finished reading? According to Goodreads, the biggest book I have read is The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. But the biggest book that I have not read for school is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin, which is I think the 3rd or 4th book in the Game of Thrones series. It's the last one I finished for sure. So neither of them very reflective of my reading overall. Question 10 is there a book you had to get your hands on at all costs? Searched through the bookstore, trolled online, stalked the author, etc. Right now, no. Because I don't care what cover I have for my ebooks. It doesn't matter. They're just on my Kindle, so I don't care about that. And you can find an ebook for virtually everything you want to read, at least in my case. But I do eventually want to build up a collection of physical books of all of the ones that I've absolutely adored. So probably once we're not likely to move again, I'd like to start going through all the books I've read as an adult, maybe even as a child, and looking for the ones that even, 5 years later stick out in my head as absolute favorites, or as the one I've reread 3 times and can't get enough of, those types of books. At that point, I'm going to be so picky and so willing to be like, I'll wait, because for those ones where it's like almost more of a collection than it is I'm buying this to actually read, then I'm going to want exactly the right cover. Like, no, I don't want the ugly movie cover or the, gross American edition cover, because I find British covers usually better. I want the perfect one. And in that case, I'll be like, yeah, I'm willing to order it in special to my bookstore. I'll buy it on eBay if I have to. Question 11, is there a book you really struggled to finish because you refused to DNF it? I'm pretty good about either liking a book and finishing it or DNFing it, but earlier this year I was reading Modifié by Sébastien Chauzu, which I don't know why. I think because I was like, I'm supposed to be working on my French, I should really keep reading this, I shouldn't give up. And I will link up above the vlog where I talk about that one, but I just didn't enjoy it, and I had to sort of like, it was like eating vegetables, except I like vegetables, so it was even worse than eating vegetables. It was that sort of feeling of like every day at lunch I was sitting myself down being like, right, you must get through 2 chapters of this book. So that one was hard, but I'm glad I finished it and could form an opinion based on the whole book. Question 12 is, what are 3 of your main book goals for 2020 or 2021 if you've started planning? I don't know. I didn't have explicit goals for 2020, and I'm still thinking about what I want my goals to be for 2021. So I'm going to go with the following. 1, I had my Goodreads challenge goal. I wanted to read 52 books, which is what I've sort of usually set it at in the past. And I surpassed that. I hit that in either July or August, I think. So that's going really well. Another unofficial goal I've had for myself is to work on reading down my TBR of books that I own. And I think I've been doing a really good job. For the most part, I've been doing a good job of choosing books for my month from that instead of buying new ones. And then one goal where, again, it's not explicit, but something I'd like to work on that I haven't been doing so well is reading more in French, because I really like to work on my French grammar and I'd really like to improve my French reading and improve my French writing, and I'm just not motivated to do it. So if you have a book that you've read in French that you absolutely adored and think needs to be read in that language, please let me know down below. Question 13 is, have you ever had the pleasure of converting someone into a reader, either by inspiration or incessant nagging? The only possible person I could have converted into a reader, I think, thinking back over my life, is my little sister, who's 6 years younger. But I don't think it's so much that she was inspired or influenced by me, as it's we're both readers because we come from a family of readers, and both of our parents read a lot, and there was always a lot of books in the house when we were kids. So I don't think it was directly my influence that made her a big reader as well. I think it's just the same influence made us both readers. So I guess I haven't had that pleasure yet. Question 14, and the last question, is describe what books mean to you in 5 words. So I've gone with sample pack of everything interesting, which it sounds really cliche and I feel kind of silly saying it, but something I really, really love about books and reading is that both in fiction and non-fiction, it allows me to go places and experience things that I will never be able to do or experience in person, or maybe that I just haven't had the chance to do yet. And it also lets you learn about things in a very accessible way. So there's a lot of things in the world where I'm interested in them and I want to know more about them. But I don't want to know more in the sense of I want to take a college course on this. I just want to know a bit more. I want to get the book version of it. So I love that about books. I love that no matter what I want, or what I need to experience or what I want to feel, I can go to a book and find that. I just have to find the right book. So those are all of my answers. If you would like to do this tag, consider yourself tagged. I would love to hear your answers too, whether you make a video or answer down below in the comments. Tell me, do you guys feel like book addicts? Because I wouldn't have described myself as that, but maybe I am? I don't know. I definitely like reading a lot. Anyways, if you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe down below, and thank you for watching.